Larry Bird and Bob Knight, if Bob was still here, are still scratching their heads over that. I think Larry had a lot of appreciation for Bob Knight. Bob Knight really went after him. Bob Knight sent three of his best players who ended up playing on that undefeated team. By the way, Larry would have been on that undefeated team if he'd stayed down to high school to eat pizza with Larry. That's how bad they wanted Larry. So Bob wanted him, but Bob Knight never changes. He's the way he is, and you've got to meet him where he's at.
Yep.
And Larry was never going to be ready for that. He just didn't have the social skills to understand that or work that. He needed a lot of help. He needed, what Indiana State did is they just created his world back in where he lived. They brought in a lot of his friends were going to school there, ran around with him. That was an enclosed bubble for Larry, and it got him through college. That wasn't going to happen at IU. Uh, I guess you could raise the question of whether, and I don't think Bob Knight would have let Larry go like Hodges did and
Mhm.
King. And in fact, I remember reading when Larry first got there, uh, King saying, we're just going to let this guy, he does his thing and he's good, and we're going to go with that until we see something we don't like, and we'll do something about it then. This reminds me of another instance, though, where people play things backwards. Somebody asked one of the assistant coaches how good Larry was that red shirt season. He said, "Oh, he was as good as he was ever going to be." And so I talked to a guy that played against Larry. In fact, his job was guarding Larry during that time. And I said, "What was it like going Larry Bird?" And he said, "Well, underneath, I could stop him." But he said, if he came across the 10-second line and shot it, there wasn't going to be any blocking that. But he wasn't doing that as much. But what I'm saying is, he wasn't there. Nobody was going ooh and ah yet. So again, Larry was getting better and learning the lay of the land, and coaches were learning how to use Larry. And there's the key to what we were talking about.
Mhm.
The coaches had to figure out what Larry needed, and they needed to give it to him. And if they did, everybody was happy. And I just don't think Bob Knight had a minute to do that. Not
Yeah,
not as a bit, we're wired the way we're wired, right?
if you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.